Okay, welcome everybody to AI TV. We're broadcasting live from AI Expo Africa 2020 online. So this year we've gone virtual because of COVID, and this is a virtual conference, and our media center is now online, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome Amit from the Embassy of Israel in South Africa, who've joined us as a supporter this year with their booth in the virtual expo hall. So welcome, Amit, and the team from Israel Embassy. Welcome.
Thank you, Nick, and it's a great to be in this show, and I hope to see more tractions in this upcoming days.
That's great to have. It's great to have you here. I mean, look, one of the reasons why I guess we reached out and started talking together a few months ago was, you know, there's some amazing software companies coming out of Israel, the tech ecosystem you have there and the investment ecosystem that's really launching some incredible software in the AI space. I mean, are you seeing that those companies now are looking now for new markets? Is Africa a market for some of these companies?
So I think, first, just the people that are not familiar with Israel and the AI landscape, and just to put the numbers in front. So Israel is considered, number 3 in the world with in terms of companies, in terms of number of companies after the US and China. And this is something that we are more than 400, 500 countries that we are dealing with in Israel. And if you look on the numbers, although South African companies have Israeli companies with 17% of all startups AI, they are in charge of almost 40% of the investments that are coming to Israel. So it's more than $2 billion in investments. So definitely we see a lot of potential in the Israeli ecosystem. If you look on the R&D expenditure in Israel, it's the highest, one of the highest in the world. It's 4.5 from the GDP. So there's a lot of things that are happening and taking forward in Israel for the AI, because AI is not a specific technology that could be implemented in one sector. It could be in agriculture, in finance, in healthcare. And this is why we see the veracity in that. And for sure, this is the next stage, for companies to move on. We see more and more power in computing that's getting in. It's becoming more reliable. And this is where we see the potential. Now, if you come back to your questions about Africa in general, so we are in South Africa, but we're also dealing with the southern region. We have also trade offices in Kenya and Ghana. I see South Africa as a kind of a springboard for the rest of the continent. So in a way, as Israel is a kind of a pilot country where you just do your beta site and then you go to the biggest markets, I see South Africa as a springboard for the rest of the continent in terms of to do your beta site here, and then you can take it and work with it with defined solutions for the continent. So there is no doubt there is a need. You do need to come with different solutions or to adjust them in a way that won't be the same as you do AI in the States or in Europe, because of the landscape of the business here, because of the price sensitivity in other areas. But for sure, there is a potential for that, and we hope to see more and more companies. We have a few companies today that we know that's working in AI landscape. For example, we have a company called Oko that they are using AI to determine if you can insurance small farmer holders in Africa. Okay. They're just sending you SMS and you can click on it and get the insurance in a few seconds. So this is the type of companies that we want to see more and more in this continent.
Yeah, look, I mean, we've obviously tried something new this year with bringing people together through the virtual platform, the virtual event, the country pavilions that we had representation from the French and the Swiss and the Dutch embassies, and they brought, we brought in total 34 companies in total. Obviously, when I say bring, they're still sat where they are in those countries, but I think it's been quite an interesting experiment to try and bring an international flavor into the event this year, and obviously yourselves as well. I know you guys just had a booth, but at least we've tried to see how we can bring some of these new companies into the market. But your analogy there about the springboard, I think it's quite an interesting one, because the African market, as you say, does have some interesting dynamics to it, which, yeah, it's not China, it's not Europe, it's not North America. So the mindset has to be different. That's exactly right. I mean, in terms of your activity as an embassy, there's obviously the idea also of companies here that might want to take a product outside of the region. What activities are you seeing in that regard?
So we are helping for South African and Southern African companies to identify relevant solutions from Israel, to put them in touch with relevant technologies that can help them to boost their solution. So if you have, for example, a very big agricultural cooperative in South Africa that wants to to add on their services also an AI component, we can do it with identify the relevant companies. Now the main benefit of working with the embassy is that, first of all, we're fully funded government agency, so we don't have really kind of commissions that we're taking or things like that. It's really to create exposure for what's going on in Israel. And second, it's easier to work with us, that we kind of a buffer that they can tell us in front, because we don't have any kind of business stakes in the companies to say, okay, this is relevant, this is not relevant, I want to talk with this company and to get more details, rather to just in front of the companies themselves. And in this regard, I can tell you that we worked in the last year with major banks in South Africa, insurance companies, telcos, and almost in every aspect of the scouting that we did for them, there was an AI component.
Yeah.
Because eventually, if you can do something with the slogan for South Africa that I'm telling to Israeli companies, do more with less, and usually it comes with AI. So if you can do it and you have a reasonable price and reasonable business plan, it's something they can take forward with that. Of course, we also help South Africans want to get to Israel. We also help them, but it's a small market. We have only 9 million people, so it's not a big market in terms of like South African clients.
Sure.
For investments and R&D collaborations. Yes, we do.
For the Israel, I always say punches well above its weight in terms of, as you say, the percentage of GDP that gets invested back into R&D, which is obviously why we see so many great examples of software coming out of your region. I mean, one of the things that's obviously driving AI is labeled data. Data drives AI. We know that, but correctly labeled data is obviously something that makes systems built on machine learning and deep learning more accurate, obviously. Now, do you see a market for Israeli software companies that if they were looking for outsourcing of data labeling, that Africa would be a destination? Because I think we've got Fast Tagger here from Kenya, we've got InLabeler from South Africa, Cape Town. These companies they've only really just started in the last sort of 12 months or so, but they have access not only to a young workforce that can do the data labeling, but also they've got the local knowledge around African specific data sets. I mean, do you see that as something where there could be an interesting relationship with Israeli software companies and outsourcing of that to the Africa region?
Sure. I think, as it's a progress. We see more and more, better infrastructure. We see more, data is coming in. Still Africa, in terms of like the data maturity, is still low. In a lot of places that you can, even in South Africa, you can go to a hospital, and all your records is like reading on paper. So it's something that still needs to be improved in South Africa in terms to create those kind of value to extract the value outside of the data. But we see this as a progress, and we see things that are moving forward. And I think that this is a great combination, because on one hand, we have the specific tech that is coming from South Africa, but we don't have the business understanding. We don't have the infrastructure or the understanding of how to gather the data that South African or African companies have. And this is something that I think will be a win-win for everyone once we can identify it. And this is also what we're trying to work usually. Even if it's not a big company, but it's a small software that can work and can to collect the data and things like that. I think it's something that will be a very beneficial to collaborate with Israeli also software and big data company to work together. And we saw some success stories in the past for those kind of collaborations.
That's great. Well, I mean, just to wrap up, I mean, where do you see the future? I mean, as the Israeli embassy in South Africa, specifically with the 4IR portfolio, have you got some specific things that you're going to be looking at in the next 12 months?
Yeah, so the main sectors that we're going to focus on will be, first of all, agriculture.
Yep.
South Africa is world leading, and there's a lot of demand for AI because of the landscape and the size of this industry. And the finance industry is also is something that we see a lot of things. We have a lot of interesting cyber solutions. Israel is predominating in this field. Israel, 10% of the global export is coming from Israel for cybersecurity. Several reasons that I want
That's amazing.
to get in now. Yeah.
Yep.
But it's something there is a lot of AI components that are involved in the cybersecurity, and South Africa is number 3 in the world in terms of attacks. So it's something that we see the potential. Hopefully we can get some traction with the mining, because mining companies today also, especially with the COVID, that you need to do the same processes, but maybe with less people, maybe to do it more efficient. It's something that we can see the potential. And also we see the telcos. This is the major, I would say, a pillar for change, because telcos in Africa are doing the banking, they're doing insurance, they're doing also additional services for agricultural, education, healthcare. So we see them also as a kind of a springboard that with them you can tap up to the other places. So it's promising, and we also working to show for Israeli companies about the potential here. We're bringing speakers, we're bringing companies to show case studies, and hopefully to see more business collaborations and success stories.
Well, that's great. Amit, and to your team, thank you very much for coming to the show virtually this year. And hopefully this will start, as you say, a springboard for other activities that we can involve each other in over the coming 12 months. And we'll keep you posted on how our own show evolves into 2021. But again, thank you for coming, and thank you for your support this year. It's great to have Israeli representation at our event for the first time. And yeah, just to say, enjoy the rest of day 2. And then our show lives on for another 30 days. So we're going to be putting thousands and more people through the platform over the next month. And obviously they'll get to see your booth and interact with you. So yeah, thank you very much for coming.
So thanks for having me, Nick. And thanks for this opportunity. And yeah, and I hope to see more and more AI activities coming to Africa.
Thanks a lot.